I'm going to show you how I sexually escalate things with women without being creepy or needy or coming off too strong. And I'm sure some of you have been in this situation as well, where you've been with a girl, everything was going okay, and you wanted to take it to the next level, you wanted to escalate things, but for some reason you didn't do it. You didn't escalate things, you just bitched out, you just didn't make any moves, or you didn't know what moves to make, and it didn't go anywhere. You didn't close the deal, you didn't end up kissing her or didn't end up having sex with her because you didn't know how to escalate properly. Or maybe you've been on multiple dates, but for some reason, every single time you don't really close things. You just end up becoming her platonic friend, or you just end up having this platonic relationship that doesn't lead anywhere. So if that's you, then this video is absolutely for you, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. So from my own experience, and this is one of the most important things to remember, is that the creepiest thing that you can do is wanting to escalate, but instead just beating around the bush and doing nothing. I found that from my personal experience, it's way better to escalate and make a move than making no move at all. And it actually made girls more comfortable when I initiated a few things than when I didn't do anything, you know? When you hide your intentions and you beat around the bush and you don't escalate at all, it's actually creepier than escalating things smoothly. You gotta escalate. And the thing is, most guys will stay in the nice guy platonic box because they keep talking about neutral things, non-romantic things, non-sexual topics. And those are needed as well. You need to build rapport, you need to build comfort. Obviously, you're going to talk about her work, studies, school, whatever. You're going to talk about fitness, you're going to talk about goals, hobbies, family, friends. All of these things have their place, right? You need to talk about these things as well to build comfort, etc. But you don't want to stay there, right? You got to escalate gradually, and that's what I'm going to show you. Now, before sexualizing things, you need to lay the proper foundations for it. And you need to set the right sexual frames with her. Not just sexual, but the right frames in general. The frame that it's meant to women. It's not just like a friendly thing, right? So whether you met her in real life or online, your conversations should come from a man-to-woman frame. There should be this romantic premise. There should be this romantic undertone behind the conversation, and things should be flirty in some way, right? It shouldn't be all platonic and all just too nice, right? You have to flirt and show some man to woman intent. For example, a lot of times when I text a girl on Instagram or on Tinder or on any dating app, before even meeting her, I'm gonna be flirtatious with her. I'm gonna start coming up with some banter or coming up with something that's a bit flirty, right? Even the way I ask questions is flirty. Like I could say things like, oh, so tell me, like, so what do you do here besides breaking hearts, right? And that's a bit flirty. I show that, okay, yeah, I'm not just this guy who is talking about work. I'm also flirty. I'm also a bit sexual, right? And same thing, if I approach a woman in real life, I'm going to inject a romantic undertone. I'm going to say things like, you caught my eye. I liked your look, or you seemed interesting, or I like your eye contact, or I love your smile. I'm going to inject like those statements that are going to make it more flirtatious, right? And that's going to set the right foundation. So ideally, even in the initial conversation, you always want to plant those romantic sexual seeds whenever you can, so that later on when you sexualize things and you escalate, it doesn't just come out of thin air. There's like this foundation of flirting, of being romantic together. And this is very, very important because the frame you set in the beginning is going to set the tone for the rest of the interaction. So you have to set the right frames from the beginning. Now, the very first thing that you need to know and do is showing intent. And basically, showing intent is verbalizing your intentions and verbalizing the fact that you kind of like her, that you're somewhat attracted to her. And you can sprinkle those statements of intent throughout the conversation. And you can say things along the lines of, for example, you have a really cute smile, by the way, or I love your eye contact, or you look really cute tonight, by the way. Things like that, right? Things where you're just sprinkling in those little statements that show that you have some romantic interest in her. It's not just a friendly thing, right? So you do that by just complimenting her, maintaining eye contact, letting her know your intentions, and you can even do some playful banter, some teasing, expressing some genuine admiration for her qualities. So if you see a quality in her, for example, you see that she's super open-minded, that she's into self-development, that she looks intelligent, whatever, you can express that, the fact that you admire that or that you like that in her, and that's going to add also more spice, you know? So that's one thing. And whenever you can, try steering the conversation away from those boring topics like school, work, family life, etc. You want to discuss other things. And sometimes you want to discuss sexual things whenever you can. So maybe you discuss a book or a movie and you highlight a moment where there's like some sexual innuendos or some sexual things that happen. Or you start discussing the topic of men-to-women relationships. You start asking her, for example, when was the last time you had a boyfriend? Or what type of guy do you like? Or what's the craziest thing you've ever done? Have you ever traveled with a guy? Right? Those kind of topics are going to introduce a foundation of sexuality in the conversation. And this is very, very, very important. Now, the problem that I see with a lot of guys is that they display intent, but they do it without having the right vibe and the right nonverbal communication. Because remember, how you say things is more important than what you say. And having a man-to-woman communication is not just about the verbal aspect. It's not just about the words you say. It's also about the nonverbal aspect and the vibe. Okay? It's about the vibe and the delivery. Those things are crucial as well. A lot of guys can remain silent, and just by the way they look at the girl, just by the way they stand, just by the way they smile, it's already very sexual, right? So you can sexually charge a conversation way more non-verbally than verbally. And this is super, super important to understand. So step one, you need to have the right seductive eye contact. Hold it a little longer. Make it seductive. Add some subtle tension with your eyes, right? Communicate interest with your eyes. Sexualize with your eyes, right? This is very key. And there's a famous concept about that where you can do some triangular gazing, for example. You can look at one eye, and then you look at another eye, and then you look at her lips. And you do that, and you add sexual tension. Now, if you overdo it, obviously it's not going to work. But just by fixating her eyes and her lips and looking at her a certain way, obviously it's going to add a lot more sexuality to the conversation. Now, step number 2, smirking. Having a nice smirk and smiling is key. Your facial expressions are key. And this is something you need to work on if you're not very expressive naturally. So you got to work on expressing the right facial expressions and having the right smirk that's a bit flirty and sexual. And step 3, your voice, your tonality, and how you fluctuate your voice when you sexualize things is important too, right? There's subtleties to that. So this is very important. These are the foundations of escalating sexually, because I could give you the best things to say, but if you don't say them the right way, it's not going to work. You understand? Now, another thing is physical touch. So there's different aspects to escalation, and one of them is physical touch. You want to start with light touches, maybe touching her hands or touching her nails or whatever. And then you want to touch her arm, touch her shoulder, touch her leg at some point maybe. And you do that by slowly and gradually escalating those things, right? There's a physical escalation ladder, right? It can't go from 0 to 100. You can't go from not touching her at all to making out. You have to gradually get yourself there, right? Now, if she leans in and reciprocates, then that's a green light and you can continue and you can escalate further. But if she pulls back and she kind of resists a little bit, then you take a step back and you continue, right? Remember, always, like when you take an action, you get a feedback, and from that feedback, you calibrate. So take small actions, both verbally and physically, and then you gauge her response. You gauge how she reacts, and you can adjust accordingly, right? It's not a blind man's game. Okay, seduction is never a blind man's game. Seduction is always a game where you need to be aware of the other party, be aware of how comfortable they are, be aware of how they respond to things, right? That's why reciting lines blindly is dumb. You can't just recite lines and expect the other party to always react a certain way, right? You have a human being in front of you, and obviously you need to learn how to calibrate things accordingly. You need to be attentive to her body language. You need to be a good listener. You need to understand the subtleties behind her facial expressions and what she does, right? This is super key. All these things are super key. And this is why whenever I escalate things with women, I'm super smooth. I rarely encounter some resistance. And one thing with physical escalation is most guys are too stiff. They don't initiate things. They don't touch at all. You have to initiate. You have to touch. Your chances of getting sexual with a girl without touching her and without initiating physical contact is 0. You're going to get laid 0 if you don't escalate physically. You got to escalate physically. You got to initiate some moves. And don't wait for the girl. Women are rarely the initiators. They're not going to initiate things. You have to initiate things. Now, most men are going to be hesitant because they don't want to appear too needy or come off too strong or creepy. But you have to understand that the fact that she's there with you on a date, or she's sitting with you at your house, or she's talking with you in some way, the fact that this is happening is that she likes you. She wouldn't be on a date with you or talking with you or dancing with you in a club or whatever if she's not interested. So you look more creepy when you actually hesitate and don't do anything. You got to do something. Otherwise, that's even creepier, as I said in the beginning of this presentation, right? Now, guys who struggle with escalation, they often have limiting beliefs. They fear being seen as creepy. They think that women are going to be, rejecting them if they do that, etc. But the truth is, women want to be approached. Women want to be desired sexually. Women want men to initiate things. And women want to be seen as this sexual being. Like, they want to be desired sexually. So by you not escalating things, both verbally and physically, you're frustrating them in a way. It's frustrating for a girl to know that this guy kind of likes you and you like him and he's not doing anything, right? It's even more frustrating. And you appear weak, That's the thing. So you don't want to do that. Now, so always remember that making a sexual or physical move is always better than making no move at all. Okay? Very important to understand. So always escalate. Don't delay your moves. She has already decided whether she was gonna sleep with you or not the initial moment she agreed to follow you or come on a date with you, right? So you gotta be quick. You gotta strike. And strike while the iron's hot. Now, there's 3 types of escalation in every interaction. There's verbal escalation, there's physical escalation, and there's logistical escalation. All these 3 are important. So if you're on a date, for example, you gotta escalate logistically. At first, you might meet her in some bar, then you might take a walk, then you bring her to your place, you show her a nice view, and that's a logistical escalation. Now, physically as well, you might start with, a hug, and then you touch her arm, then her shoulder, then her leg, then you play with her hair, you make out, and then you touch her breast, you touch her ass, like, it's gradual, right? And then same verbally. You start with something very normal, like you ask her, okay, so when was the last time you traveled? Oh, have you ever traveled with a boyfriend? Oh, what was your longest relationship? Oh, what type of guys do you like? Oh, cool. I bet you like dominant guys. Are you into BDSM? Oh, okay. No. And you start small and then you level it up. See what I mean? So that's very, very important. And if you want to escalate things properly, then at every point in the interaction, you need to be like a chess player and you need to be thinking, what is the best next move here? Okay? Every time, I think like a chess player. What is the best move that makes the most sense and that has the lowest risk or probability of backfiring, right? That's really how I think, right? Because there's a right timing for everything. And especially when it comes to seduction, the guys that are smooth are the guys who know when to pull the trigger, because there's a right time to things, right? Having good game is all about being smooth. And I always say that good game is like good plastic surgery. Okay? Good game should feel natural and should feel smooth. It shouldn't feel forced. So it's really like good plastic surgery in a way. It's like, it looks natural. It doesn't look like you're doing some weird stuff, right? So good game is about knowing the moves, knowing how to pull the moves smoothly, like at the right time, and having the balls to do what needs to be done without hesitation. And this comes with experience, obviously, and all these things, but it's that, like, you need to know the moves, know when to do the moves, and execute the moves with balls and confidence. That's what game is. And inside my premium programs, we cover the whole verbal system, the whole escalation system. I'm not going to go into that right now because it would take me another 2 hours to go into everything. But this is what we cover inside my premium programs as well, right? And mastering escalation also means being good at balancing the verbal and the physical, because you got to do both. So let's say that for the past few minutes, you've been escalating verbally, you warmed her up verbally and psychologically, then you know that, okay, maybe now I need to step it up a notch with physical escalation as well. If you've done too much verbal and you've done very low physical, then do a bit more physical. Balance it out. If you've done too much physical and you feel like you've hit a certain threshold, then yeah, just do a bit more verbal and warm her up even more verbally, and then take it up a step further physically later on, So a bit of physical, a bit of verbal, a bit of physical, a bit of verbal, and balance it out, right? This is very key as well. So how do you escalate physically and verbally without being creepy? Well, it's all about gradual progression and calibration. You have to think of it like boiling water, right? At first, the water is not boiling. The water is normal room temperature, right? So you start with some intent, you start with a few statements, and that's how you spark a bit of attraction. And the water starts warming up this way. So if you see the conversation as water, at first, the water is neutral, room temperature, normal, right? Conversation is kind of neutral. Then you start spiking the conversation with some intent. You spark some attraction. You slowly turn the heat up, right? And then the water starts warming up. And then you escalate a bit even more physically, verbally, until it's boiling and she wants you, right? That's how you do it. Now let's cover this analogy. I really love this analogy and I think this will resonate. So if you throw a frog into a boiling pot of water, it will quickly jump off. Like if you take some water that's boiling and you take a frog and you just throw it there, it's going to jump. However, If you gently put a frog into some room temperature water, so normal water, and you slowly increase the temperature until it boils, then the frog will eventually burn to death. And this is a famous experiment. You can look it up on Google. It's very famous. And women are a bit similar in this regard. If you come off too strong, verbally and physically, you get blown out. But if you gradually and slowly escalate, you test the waters, you gauge her compliance, and you escalate at a reasonable pace, then usually you're going to build compliance gradually and everything will go smoothly, right? So this is very key to understand. And another thing is attraction is experienced differently between the sexes. As men, we experience attraction much faster than women. For us, attraction is like a light switch. We see a girl, she has a nice booty, a nice face, maybe some nice titties. We want to have sex with her. We like her, right? For a woman, it's a bit different. Yes, they can like a guy just by looking at the guy, but they need a bit more time to really feel comfortable. It's a bit more progressive. And so for women, it's a bit more like a volume knob, right? It's a bit like a volume knob. They need to be around you for some time. They need to absorb your personality. They need to see who you are and how you behave. And they'll get more attracted the longer you act attractively around them. So the more you act in an attractive way around them and you behave the right way, the more attracted they become, because they can see evidence that, okay, this guy is a winner. This guy gets it. This guy is, I like this guy. And they need to spend some time to know that, right? To determine that about you. So attraction for men and women is experienced differently, and women need a bit more time. So that's why you gotta take your time and calibrate and do it gradually. What guys will do wrong is they will come off either too strong verbally from the get-go, like verbally, they're gonna just throw it out there. They're gonna just say things too strongly and it's not gonna work. It's gonna repel the girls too quickly. Or on the other end, because they're afraid of being seen as creepy or needy or coming off too strong, they don't make any move. And that's even worse. So they end up in like 30-minute conversations leading to nothing, or back-to-back dates without any physicality or any sex. And they end up being the girl's platonic best friend and nothing happens. So either they come off too strong or they don't do anything. You want to be in the middle. Okay, you want to understand how to be in the middle and how to be smooth. There's an old school concept in game that kind of illustrates this as well. It's called 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And the idea is that you escalate a little bit, and then you escalate a little bit more if she responds to that positively, and then you back it off and you let it breathe a little, right? It's like pressure on, and then pressure off. Pressure on, and then pressure off. So you escalate a little bit, then maybe a bit more if she bites, and then you back it off and you let it breathe, right? And everybody's better off this way, because that way you're not gonna go over the edge, right? And it's gonna be more smooth, right? So the general idea is that every time you make 2 steps forward, you then make 1 step back. So for example, let's say you might be already touching her arm. Well, if you're already touching her arm and she's okay with that, maybe you can then touch her leg at some point. You can ask her, oh, by the way, do you squat? Do you go to the gym? And then you touch her leg, right? And if she's okay with that, then you don't want to go directly into like, I don't know, like making out. No, you want to take a step back, let it breathe, talk about more stuff, and then maybe you can go for something else, something a bit more intense, or something that would take the escalation further, right? So 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? It's like, when having sex in the beginning, in the foreplay. In the beginning, you kiss her, you see if she's okay with that. If she's okay with that, then cool. Then you try touching her titties. If she's okay with that, then cool. But you don't want to go straight into just after touching her titties, you go down, right? You want to stop, let it breathe, kiss again without touching her titties, or just talk a bit more, and then take it a step further. Now you not only kiss her but touch her titties, and then maybe grab her ass this time. Whereas the prior to that you weren't touching her ass, but now that you've let it breathe for a little bit, you come up with an extra step, and then you go a step back and you let it breathe again. So you make 2 steps forward, you make an extra step, and then you take it a step back, right? This is a way to kind of always, be smooth and not take it over the edge. The main idea is that you don't want to push as fast as you can when you escalate. You got to let it breathe. You got to be patient. You got to calibrate, and calibration is the key. Okay? You take your time. You understand that the girl's attraction for you is like a volume knob. It's gradual, and you slowly and steadily escalate, right? Remember the analogy of the frog. That's how you come off as smooth. Now, another point to remember when it comes to physically escalating is that you should always try to go for more compliance on an emotional high, not on an emotional low. And this comes down to her buying temperature. So during the course of your interaction with a woman, there's different levels of energy. There's ups and downs, there's highs and lows, right? And you gotta escalate on a high. And you can tell when a woman's buying temperature is high, like she becomes gigglier, maybe she starts touching you, she becomes more playful, and that's when you want to escalate. For example, if I'm on a dance floor with a girl and she's dancing with me, she's twerking on me, she's like grabbing me, whatever, then I know her buying temperature is high, and if I kiss her, it's probably going to be a good time, right? But if we're talking about some boring topic, and we're talking about how her dad just died 2 years ago, and how, she's sad and whatever, that's not the best moment to initiate some touch there. You see what I mean? So you got to be smooth and kind of escalate on a high. Ride the wave of her emotions. When her emotions are high and they're positive, then you escalate. That's how you do it, right? Anyways, if you want to learn more about all these things, I have a free community on School where I have more than 15 plus hours of content covering some powerful systems. We have a community and everything, so you can join if you're not there yet. Now, if you want to accelerate your journey, we also have a premium community on School with weekly calls, with access to my premium programs and my content. And finally, if you're truly serious about getting there, we also have the mentoring program, the Dating Accelerator Mentoring, where we have 2 calls per week, one-on-one access to me on Telegram. We have different levels of support, and it's much, much deeper. The mentoring is much deeper, but it's limited to 20 spots per month. So the seats are extremely limited, and that's why you need to apply to be part of it. So if you're serious, you can book a call with my team. There's probably a link somewhere where you can book a call, and we can see if you're the right fit, and we can see based on your situation. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's training. If you enjoyed, leave a like, leave a review, leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you very, very soon.